Hi, Sally.
Hello.
Talk to me about your background and Essex Recovery Foundation.
I applied for the job in, I think, February. I was previously employed in a hospice, so I'd been working in 2 hospices doing community development work, because that's who I am. I do community development work, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And I just happened to, maybe I had a bad day at work, have a look on the Guardian website for jobs, and I saw this job, Essex Recovery Foundation. And I'd done a search term, which was community development. So I knew that it was a job that I might be interested in. But I'll be honest, recovery is not a word that I associated and what I now know is recovery. I thought recovery was what you did when you had an operation and you went to a hospital and you lay in a bed and recovered, or you had
So initially, that's what kind of spoke to you, but you were gravitated towards the role.
So it was Essex. I wanted an Essex-based job.
Right.
I knew it was community development, but it was quite hard to get underneath what the role was going to be.
Interesting.
And I think that's, possibly relatable to the massive issue that we have in recovery, that nobody knows how to get support, nobody knows there is free support. There's free support in every county in this country, yet nobody knows that. People are walking around every day thinking, maybe I've got a problem, but what do I do about this? I know about AA, but I've heard that's all about God, and I'm not sure if that's for me, and I'm going to have to go into a room of people, and I don't know if they're going to be the same kind of people as me, and so I'm not doing that. And then on the other side, you've got rehab, but I've heard that's £5,000 a week, and that's not me. So I'm just walking around with this issue, and I'm just going to have to deal with it. So that's stopping people getting support, and we've got to sort that out. That's a massive problem nationally, and in Essex that's a massive problem, and that's partly what we're trying to conquer in Essex.
Amazing.
But so I do community development work, and I find myself here, and I find myself once again in a situation or an industry where I've picked up a stone, and I didn't know that stone was even needing picking up, and underneath it's this whole cosmos going on that I didn't know was in existence, and it's opened up this whole new world to me, and I love it. There's so much opportunity for community development work in recovery.
Incredible.
Because fundamentally, I think that community is what's going to get people through.
Yeah.
That's what people plug into. Finding others and being able to share your own experience and being able to talk to others who've been through something similar to you is the best therapy. Just talking about what's happened to you with people who've been through something similar is so meaningful. So I'm really lucky that I've stumbled upon this opportunity to kind of bring some of that facilitation of community to this role as well.
You're making me well up with your passion for it. It's really inspiring, and I agree.
I'm really lucky. I grew up in a community. I grew up in East London in a place that was absolutely chock full of community. I grew up in a community. I still feel part of that community. When I go back to East London, I'm walking down the road and I feel like this is home, because it's about place identity, it's about shared experience. I was then lucky enough to work in an organisation for 15 years. I was a youth worker for 10 of those years. And I had an epiphany when I was a youth worker. I used to work with young people and do kind of crime diversion work, or I did homelessness prevention, sex education, drugs, the whole thing. And I realised that the best work I did with young people was when I worked with young people as part of a community. Yeah. So I worked on this project where we worked with the 50 most at-risk young people of having a criminal career in a defined area. And we'd do all this, kind of stuff, positive activities, but we'd do stuff where we'd got them to kind of be involved in their local community, and it literally changed their lives. Wow. And it changed my life because I realised that rather than just pigeonhole myself as a youth worker for the rest of my life, what I need to do is community development work. So, and I worked in this organisation, and I reflect on that now, that actually we were a community. The staff there, there was loads of us worked there for years and years. Many of us were service users of that organisation. And as a community, we worked in communities. And it's that essence that I want to bring to this. Yeah. Because, when you are that community, and you help bring that community and facilitate that community, that's where the magic happens, I
totally agree.
So I did that for a long time. And then I took a job in a hospice just on a whim. Again, one random night looking on the internet, I'm going to apply for a job, what am I going to do? Next thing you know, I'm in an interview, then I've got it, and then I'm on the phone saying, oh, you know, I've got to hand my notes in. So I find myself in a hospice, and, you know, it's similar, because hospices are places, you know, you'll all have misconceptions about hospices, you know, they're places where you go and die, and, you know, it's where you go for the end of life. But, you know, the truth is that, you know, hospices are places of life and living, and places where people come together around this life experience that is death, dying and bereavement. And, you know, really powerful stuff can happen there. So I spent a few years working in a hospice in Hackney. I was delivering a project called Compassionate Neighbours, which is now delivered nationally, actually, which has been really successful. So Compassionate Neighbours was a project where we would we'd train volunteers who would then match with people who were at home on their own and were dying, and then go and visit them on a weekly basis, and, you know, have cups of tea and all that. Befriending, but not befriending. I don't like to call it that because it was better than that. But my role was to create this community that was compassionate neighbours. So I met this woman, and she said to me one day, you know, I want to be a compassionate neighbour, and you know, I've done the training and you know, all that stuff, but I actually support this woman who lives down the balcony to me. She's 99, she never goes out, nobody visits her, I pop in, I get her milk, etc. And I'm like, so you're doing it anyway. What made you think that you need to come here and be trained and connected to us? And she was like, I just want to meet other people who are doing the same thing.
Be part of it, yeah, part of something.
And meet others who are doing the same thing. And it, you know, then it clicked that what we need to do is create a space in which people can come together, meet other people, have ideas, and then it's our role to support them to make those ideas happen. So that's what we're doing.
I think that's brilliantly put. I think that's the key component that's missing, and in our societies today, is we all know the story about being disconnected and not having community. So I think it's key. What do you think? It's kind of brought a question to the tip of my tongue. What do you think about why these shock stories in the newspaper, for example, they don't work? They don't kind of make people think twice about their decisions. You know, I have an example in my head. You know, say for example, Daniela Westbrook. You know, she nearly lost her nose. It was very shocking and, you know, horrendous. Like, why do people not connect to it on that level?
I think that people do othering, don't they? They think, you know, that's other people, that's not me, and you think that, you know, you hear stories about what's led that person. With Daniela Westbrook in particular, you know, there's been lots of shocking stories over the years, and, you know, for 20 years we've all followed those. But because they're quite explosive and shocking, and maybe our day-to-day is not that, I mean, it, you know, it can still be explosive and shocking, and, you know, doing drugs at the weekend, you know, all kinds of things can happen. But, you know, Daniela Westbrook was a whole new level, and therefore you think, well, you know, I'm not as bad as that, and actually maybe that makes the whole thing worse, Savannah. Maybe you think, well, I'm not Daniela Westbrook, so I can just carry on like this.
This is fine.
Yeah. You know, another example was Leah Betts. You know, Leah Betts, I remember clearly, I was about 15.
Same age,
So 15, and Leah Betts was a massive story. In fact, Leah Betts, interestingly, is buried in the same cemetery as my dad, so I think about this quite a lot. But Leah Betts happened at a time when I was using ecstasy for the first time, and nobody, that didn't even worry me then, you know, because you just think, well, that's something else.
Something else.
She drank
is far removed.
15 pints of water. I won't do that, you know, so as long as I don't drink too much water, I'll be fine.
And also, I think that these stories, they're just talking about the drug, aren't they? The symptom. They're not talking about the reason that people are doing it, or what they're covering up, or the disease of addiction, or etc. It's just that there's no support in these stories.
No.
It's just the end goal and the end result that people can't relate to because it's so far away from.
Totally. And what we need is we need to understand that we need positive stories of visible recovery, so that people can identify with the idea that you can go to festivals. You know, having gone to festivals, you know, myself, not for years, but, you know, the idea of going to festivals and not doing drugs feels preposterous. But, you know, actually the reality of that, and seeing that and filming that and sharing that with people would be really powerful.
I agree.
So we need far more public awareness about addiction, and to, you know, to challenge this inequality that I think there is in society, where people are not getting support. It's a health inequality. You know, people are not getting support because there isn't enough information about support or awareness about addiction. You know, people have all kinds of ideas. If you're not pouring vodka on your cornflakes, you're not an alcoholic. If you're not doing drugs every single day, you haven't got a problem. You know, it's these
totally misconstrued. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question to you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about functioning addicts? That phrase. What does that conjure up for you?
So functioning. I mean, it's a clunky term, isn't it? I'm not sure I like it very much.
Because there's nothing functioning about it, right?
No, and I'm not sure. So it's about the perception of functioning, isn't it? It's about being able to hold down a job and being able to drive a car and being able to get up in the morning and do all that stuff. But actually what I believe, you know, a functioning addict to do is to make their drug and substance and alcohol abuse fit around kind of doing some of that stuff and maintaining an addiction and having, you know, to do that functioning stuff as a side hustle. It's interesting, you know, the people that we're working with at the Essex Recovery Foundation now, you know, many of them, I would say, probably define themselves as functioning addicts. And maybe that's the majority of addiction. You know, maybe that is the majority of addicts.
Getting away with it.
Yeah.
Getting away with it.
Yeah.
Problems behind the scenes, but on the outside, things are working.
Yeah.
Job.
Yeah.
Marriage, whether it's working or not, you know, toxic or not, doesn't matter.
No.
Children,
but maintaining the boundaries,
children still, you know, alive, you know, all of this kind of stuff.
And health,
that's tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. Health too, you know, health. Because nobody checks up on your health, do they? You know, you don't go to the doctor to have an MOT and they say, you know, how many cigarettes do you smoke? And you know, they ask you about smoking, but they never ask you about drugs and alcohol really as part of that. So, what if they started asking about drug use and about alcohol? Whether people would be honest, I'm not sure, but actually maybe that would be the beginning of a conversation.
Well, just to have a conversation.
I know.
It's not, there's no conversation. There is such a stigma attached to it.
Totally. You know, someone said to me recently, and this really resonated, that it feels like addiction is where mental health was like 10, 15 years ago. So nobody talks about it, you don't speak of the words. If you were feeling unwell, you know, you better not tell anyone, let alone work. And then we've gone to, here we are today in 2022 with mental health first aiders in workplaces and, you know, mind part of the national consciousness. And I feel like that's what needs to happen in addiction. You know, we need a campaign to, you know, kind of educate people about addiction and be talking about it and show people in recovery who are living their best lives.
And also not coming in at the end, you know, coming in at, you know, root of the cause, isn't it? You know, children, you know, young teenagers, giving them the ability to understand themselves and their feelings. Because the drugs and the alcohol are the symptom management, it's not the root, is it?
No, totally. And in part, I think it's a bit about community as well, just to bring it back to that. You know, I think that people, you know, living a party lifestyle and, you know, kind of spending weekends with the same people and people on the peripheries, you become a bit of a community, you know, staying up
that's your tribe.
Exactly. And their friends, you know, you meet their friends and then you can go to other towns and cities and you found your people, you know. And actually that feels like a community, and it is. So if you stop doing that, but if you stop doing that, you need to then find your home again or find your tribe again.
That's brilliant.
What we want to do in Essex to start with, and then, you know, the rest of the world maybe, but make Essex a place where people are supported to enter treatment, so people understand that there is free support, there's high quality support, and, you know, kind of holistic, tailor-made support for people as well. So people are supported to enter into treatment and then are supported to come out the other end of it so that they don't have to come out feeling like their whole life needs to change. I can't imagine, you know, kind of going to rehab and then feeling like at the end of that, you weren't, you know, what were you going to do in terms of the friends and the circle of people that you were
no, there's a lot of work to be done in lots of different areas for sure. Sally, tell me about what you think about Ready to Reset on a whole, the vision that we have, and why you think it adds value.
So I think it's a missing piece of the jigsaw. I think that Ready to Reset can be a really positive force for good, and I think that on a, you know, kind of national level, being able to put out stories of people who might identify, you know, to the viewer might identify with those people far more than the kind of deficit videos that we see of people that are, you know, completely uninspiring and probably make you think, well, I don't want to enter that treatment if that's, you know, going to be
what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Is that going to be the kind of people I'm going to be with, or, you know, all of that stuff. So what Ready to Reset could do is, you know, bring some reality to the situation, being able to see that people are, you know, normal, are inspirational, are having a great time and living their best life. Because you just don't see it.
Agreed.
You know, recovery in the UK, I mean, you know, not least to say that I didn't even associate the word with what recovery is. So we need public education about that, you know, so that when we're talking about recovery, everybody knows what we're talking about, because otherwise we're at cross purposes. But really, who have we got? You know, we've got Russell Brand, we've got, you know, very few people are in the public eye and are talking about this. So we need much more of that. So hopefully that's what Ready to Reset can do.
And I agree, I think, and the people that are in the public eye, they're just a little bit far out of reach for people, aren't they?
Totally. Russell Brand,
they're film stars, or they're in this, or they've got immense value, money, etc. So there's this bridge of like, where's the norm?
And how do you even get there? You know, how do you? It's fine to talk about being in recovery, but I think we need to understand, and we need videos and people sharing their story about that whole process.
Yeah, how it works, how to get there.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, Russell Brand talks about being in recovery. I have no idea
how he got there.
How he got there, what happened. I've got an idea of, you know, what he did, but yeah, that's, you know, so that's definitely what we need.
Another side to Ready to Reset is not just the storytelling, but it's actual face-to-face beats with people that have been in situations that people are in at that moment. Yeah. And that's why we talked about going into corporate. What do you think about that?
I think that would be a phenomenal idea. I think that the more conversations, the more opportunities that people have to just sit and share that resonance that comes from, you know, human one-to-one contact, where you can talk about what's happened to you and other people can then think, well, you know, maybe that's me. I think that will be phenomenal. And, you know, what we know in Essex is that there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of people drinking to high-risk levels. There's thousands of people taking drugs destructively, and you know, those people are working in corporate organisations. You know, they're working in London, they're working in the home counties, and we need to bring the conversations to workplaces, and we need to bring it to lots of different places, but corporates would be a great place to start, I think.
I think also, you know, when I say going into corporate, what is that nowadays?
I don't know.
After COVID,
maybe it's on Zoom. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the pandemic has caused immense problem, and not least for people who are suffering with addiction and in recovery. You know, the isolation that everybody globally suffered during the first, you know, the early stages of the pandemic was awful. But imagine, you know, that for people who were just entering into treatment and recovery. And you know, I've met people that for that was their reality. I think that, you know, the whole working from home thing that happened to us all has had a profound effect on people's drug use and drinking. You know, you can just do whatever you liked. You know, that whole thing in 2020 of you know, people just drinking all day, every day, and just talking about it like it was normal. You know, people just openly admitting that they're drinking more than normal, the government talking about it. And that'll still be going on. You know, people wouldn't have stopped because we've kind of gone back to normal. People will still be working at home, they'll still be just drinking, smoking weed and doing whatever and just getting away with it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's an interesting thing that you said a moment ago. You know, it's just about winging it. People are just winging it, aren't they? And going into corporates to talk about this might help people to understand that you are just winging it, but maybe you don't need to. You know, maybe you can actually address this problem.
Yeah.
So I feel really privileged to have this opportunity. So I applied for the job. I think that was like March. Turned up in May, and you know, Lawrence will agree. You know, things have been a little bit confused in terms of our big vision and, you know, what we're trying to do with the organisation. But what was amazing is that literally from day one, Lawrence and I have been on the same page, and we totally agree with each other. When we go into situations and we, you know, experience things, we feel the same about it, and that's amazing. Lawrence gives me loads of respect and loads of autonomy to just do what I think's right, and that's brilliant because that brings out the best in me.
Definitely.
And I think we've got something amazing going on, actually. I think we can really make profound change. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like this alchemy of things happen. You know, you both apply for a job and you turn up and, you know, you've got ideas and you meet other people and just this whole thing comes
just
together.
kind of like working together, the clogs coming and only because it feels good and it feels like the right thing to do, having faith and trusting that that is the right thing to do. All of the dynamics and, you know, incessants will work themselves out.
That's it. It's part of the synchronicity, isn't it? So Lawrence and I have, you know, started something over in Essex with others. Then we were connected to Amit through somebody that we know, and now we've met you, Savannah. And you know, you're at the beginning of Ready to Reset, and you know the opportunities there in front of you. How exciting! You know, what people want to get involved. What's your kind of next steps really in terms of? I
think that's it really. I think it's baby stages, it feels good. We've got an opportunity to get the right people on board that have got the same vision. You know, even if it's different kind of sectors and areas of expertise coming together, and I say that as an expertise, it doesn't have to be qualifications. We're talking about life skills, and we're talking about passion and people that bring something to the table from their own experience. So this is like a very, very beautiful time to forge these connections with people, look them in the eye and go, are we on the right path? Is this what we want to achieve? The rest will sort itself out.
Totally, yeah. It does feel, you know, it feels at the right time, doesn't it? It feels that, you've got the right idea just at the right time and kind of meeting lots of interesting people. So what's your vision for Ready to Reset and, you know, what you do next and, you know, what's the big idea around meeting people and...
There are different aspects with Ready to Reset that are important to me. I've got the side that I feel that people need help and I want to help people. But also on the flip side, I know that this is a very personal mission as well. I have wasted a lot of years in active addiction. I have not reached my potential. And even that phrase, saying it, makes me conjure up kind of resistance because it was something that was said to me time and time again. But I kept falling. It wasn't just because of my addiction, it was my life purpose wasn't being fulfilled. Hence, back to the addiction, you know, that inner kind of wanting something more and feeling lost. And now I feel like I can add a lot of value here. I've always liked helping people. I'm the oldest of 6, it's in my nature anyway. I trained to be a nutritionist. I love helping people, it's part of the nature, but this just feels so much more right, so much more on point for what I can give back. So it's a very personal mission as well for me to reach my full potential and then also to help other people reach their full potential, whether that's letting them get their life back on track or whether that's building a community where we are employing, where we are providing services, etc. So the scope is to just build that and have the right people along and to let people reach their full potential alongside, all together. You know, not in competition, not looking to left to right, all together in the same vision. It's very personal to me.
Yeah, passion shines through. I think the time's right. I think, you know, we're learning about other organisations in other parts of the country that are doing amazing things that are, you know, kind of recovery-led organisations and are challenging stigma and building communities of people in recovery that are part of the communities in which they live. So in Liverpool, in Preston, in Leeds. I must say that in London and the South East, that's scarce. You know, I think there's opportunities here. And yeah, I think there's a definite will to bring all of that together, you know, becoming part of a network that can make change in this country.
Definitely. Sally, you've got so much experience and it's actually a pleasure to hear you talk so passionately about it as well. Why do you think Ready to Reset would be attractive for grants and fundraising? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've worked mostly in the charity sector for my whole career, but I've worked in councils. We're affiliated with a council, a county council now. And I think that Ready to Reset would be really attractive to councils and to trusts and grants, because I think that you're talking about societal change and taking a public health approach to changing the narrative around what people think about addiction and what people think treatment is. So actually that's powerful, you know, that change that you talk about is very powerful, and I think that if councils and grant makers were given the opportunity to hear some of your ideas and your vision for Ready to Reset, that would be really attractive. You know, councils up and down the country have a budget, a public health budget, to provide treatment services for people in addiction, and on a, you know, council by council, county by county basis. I don't know what the uptake of that is, but there's so much more to do, and there's so many more people who need support. So, you know, working alongside an organisation such as Ready to Reset would be the icing on the cake. And it's about this idea, you know, this idea of visible recovery and, you know, positive kind of, you know, stories about people, and not this deficit model of, you know, poor them and that's, you know, really awful for them. And, you know, as we talked about some of the stories that are shared and the images as well. You know, I used to take the grey box into youth clubs and schools and talk about sex, drugs and rock and roll to young people.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I am as well, but I was very conscious. So I remember clearly, like, somebody coming to school when I was a kid with this grey box that was full of, like, you know, 30 drugs, microdrops, telling me, showing me what I could do. You know, it's like this whole menu of things. Like, I don't even know where to get a microdot. So, I don't know, I think there's still a glamorisation around it. And, you know, you kind of walk a fine line. You also get people, you know, who are in arrested development, you know, often in youth work, and I can say that as a seasoned youth worker, who are delivering some of this work and are not always on the right side of positivity about it, you know? So that's something to be mindful of. But yeah, I think definitely there's a lot of work to be done around prevention. But I think prevention in terms of helping people to understand about developing their own self-esteem and the reasons that people do drugs and people do drink, you know, that's what we need to focus on.
That's what I mean by being all for it, having that dialogue, having that non-grey area, not glamorising it, but being real. Because, you know, at the end of the day, it starts in childhood. All of this stuff, you know, all of this stuff that people are trying to fill inside starts in childhood. So giving people tools to talk about emotions and to talk to them one-on-one and to let them express and to not silence their voice and to not make them fit in line. All of this dialogue is all the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes a conversation about a drug lose its fire.
Yeah, because I think you've hit on the nub there. It's about the conversation and about the engagement of young people and adults' emotions in that conversation. Providing information about drugs and alcohol to young people is not going to help anyone. It's just providing information, you know? But if we can contextualise that conversation or that information giving with, you know, the reasons that people might take drugs and the emotions that you might be feeling around some of this now. Because, you know, if people are going into schools, young people are probably already doing drugs, you know? You're not showing them drugs for the first time in that grey box. Nor alcohol. You know, we've got such a terrible culture in this country around alcohol. You know, alcohol's a massive part of UK culture. And, you know, challenging that, you know, people aren't always in the right place to hear the information. It's, you know.
I agree.
So, you know what you said, Savannah, about having a conversation about the feelings and emotions that make you drink and make you take drugs is what we need to do.
Yeah.